For many, taking an Alaska cruise is a bucket list trip. We've sailed on all the major cruise lines at various points in the season, and over these years, we've learned quite a bit about traveling way up north. So whether you're a seasoned cruiser or this is your first sailing, we put together this video of our expert Alaska cruise tips and tricks to ensure your cruise is smooth sailing. So let's dive in. Welcome aboard, cruisers. I'm Don B from Eat Sleep Cruise, where we help you see the world one port at a time. Heidi and I have been traveling to Alaska for over 10 years. And based on those experiences, we've put together this video that covers everything you need to know, from picking the right Alaska cruise to booking your trip, packing, making the most of the onboard amenities, as well as shore excursion tips. This video will help you through every step of the cruise process. Of course, if you have any questions at all, please leave them in the comment section below and we will be sure to answer them. When taking an Alaska cruise, it's really about the destination. So our first Alaska cruise tip is to focus first on the itinerary. We do get a lot of questions about what's the best cruise line or the best cruise ship in Alaska, and we have some tips for picking those later on in this video. But for us, it's more important that you pick an itinerary that has the destinations and the ports of call that you really want to see. There are basically two main options when it comes to itineraries. There are one-way cruises, which begin and end at a different port, or a round-trip cruise that begins and ends at the same home port. We have sailed on both itineraries, and there are pros and cons of each route. So decide what's most important to you and review itineraries across several cruise lines closely. The most common Alaska cruises are 7 days in length and are round-trip sailings that depart from either Seattle, Washington, or Vancouver, British Columbia. There are more options for round-trip cruises, and they're easier to plan, but they typically visit less destinations as they can't go as far north. However, these itineraries tend to have more family-friendly ship options with more onboard amenities and attractions. Generally, one-way sailings are from Seward or Whittier, Alaska to Vancouver, British Columbia, or vice versa, sailing northbound or southbound routes. One-way sailings may visit more ports of call, but between airfare costs and the additional travel days that might be needed, these cruises can cost more money and be more difficult to plan. Also, these sailings tend to be on older, smaller ships. Odds are you're going to Alaska to see some glaciers. Depending on the itinerary, most cruise ships will offer scenic cruising at least one day. There are a variety of glaciers that ships can visit during the sailing. Perhaps the two most popular glacier cruising spots are Hubbard Glacier and Glacier Bay National Park. You should know the difference before picking your cruise itinerary. There are others too, like the Dawes Glacier or the Sawyer Glacier. Again, we've cruised on itineraries that have visited many of these popular viewing spots. If you're a first-time cruiser, our cruise tip is to pick a traditional 7-day round-trip cruise that stops at Glacier Bay National Park. While you can't go wrong with most itineraries, Glacier Bay affords the opportunity to see multiple glaciers over the course of several hours. Plus, we think the park rangers do a fantastic job with the onboard enrichment and activities that complement the scenic sailing into and out of the park. It is true that almost all major cruise lines now sail to Alaska. So if you're already loyal to one particular brand, one of our tips is just find a ship offering an itinerary that suits you and stick with that cruise line. If you're new to cruising, it might be overwhelming trying to decide between cruise lines and cruise ships. Several lines claim they are the best in Alaska, but honestly, there's no one best Alaska cruise line or cruise ship. It really depends on your travel party, what you want to do and see, and what ship amenities are important to you. Brands like Norwegian Cruise Line and Royal Caribbean offer more diversity for multi-generational families. Carnival Cruise Line and Disney Cruise Line are also popular choices for family cruises to Alaska, especially if you have younger children. Couples may want to consider Princess Cruises, Celebrity Cruises, or Holland America Line. In fact, Princess Cruises and Holland America Line have the most ships sailing the region. There are also luxury cruise lines or small boutique cruise ships with 100 passengers or less, giving cruisers a completely unique experience. While you're comparing the cruise ship options, one very important cruise tip is to find a ship with prime viewing areas. Some ships boast multiple outdoor platforms or decks that give cruisers ideal views to the scenery. Other ships have enclosed spaces and observation lounges, but in the warm comforts of the ship. Some ships actually have both, so you can go in between these areas depending on the weather. Along with researching what viewing areas are available, check out the other amenities on the ships that might interest you and your family. Is there an enclosed pool on the ship? Is there a spa or a thermal suite? What are the youth centers or activities for junior cruisers like? Not to mention, each cruise line has various offerings for restaurants, entertainment, and onboard activities. With such a diversity of cruise ships sailing the region, even within brands themselves, you should review the cruise ship amenities before you decide on one. Most major cruise lines release itineraries up to 2 years in advance. For our trips, we tend to book anywhere between 8 months to a full year in advance. The biggest reason you should book a cruise early is to secure the best prices. As specific sailings begin to fill up, prices will go up. Popular room categories and locations book up quickly as well. Booking your cruise early, you'll have a greater selection of cabins. You'll also get your preferred dining times. Of course, this will also give you more time to pay off the cruise and to plan all aspects of your trip. Having a cruise booked in advance always gives you something to look forward to as well. Now, speaking of paying off that cruise, one of the most important Alaska cruise tips is always knowing the cruise cost so you can budget accordingly. When Alaska cruise planning, you should know that Alaska cruise vacations are a bit on the pricey side when compared to Caribbean cruises, so don't get sticker shock. Alaska cruise costs fluctuate considerably depending on a few factors. The cruise line and cruise ship, the Alaska cruise itinerary, and the time of year will all weigh heavily on pricing. Not to mention the tours you pick, the add-ons, and additional costs like drink packages or Wi-Fi. But we recommend cruisers budget between $2,000 to $5,000 a person for an Alaska cruise. So it's not unreasonable that a family of 4 could spend over $10,000 for a week-long Alaska cruise. Now, if you need more help budgeting for your Alaska cruise, you're in luck because we have a complete video right here on YouTube that walk you through all the costs associated with taking an Alaska cruise and how much you should budget for each category. Even if you've cruised before, we recommend using a travel agent to book your Alaska cruise. A good travel agent can help you decide on some factors listed above. A seasoned travel advisor will also be able to offer recommendations and suggestions to customize your Alaska cruise to your travel party's preferences. They can also save you money on this pricey Alaska cruise as well. In addition to helping you find the best itinerary and ship, travel agents might have access to discounted cruise fares, or advisors might offer additional perks like onboard credit, free gratuities, or specialty dinners. These additional perks can be combined with any promotions from the cruise lines. Several of the major cruise lines offer various fare options. Some cruise lines let you lock in a lower rate by booking what is called a guaranteed cabin. This will ensure you get a cabin in a specific category, like a balcony cabin, but the location of the cabin is not known until closer to the sail date. We often select this option as a great way to save money. Of course, if you want a specific cabin or location, or are prone to motion sickness, this option is probably not good for you. Many cruise lines also offer upgrade packages that you should consider pre-cruise. Programs like Holland America Lines have it all, Celebrity Cruises all included, or Princess Cruises, Princess Plus, and Princess Premier packages provide additional savings. Opting for one of these packages lets cruisers save 50% or more before the sailing by bundling add-ons like a drink package, Wi-Fi, shore excursions, or service charges. We often opt for these packages to save money and to make our cruise more inclusive. Again, working with a travel agent can help you navigate the different fare options available for your sailing to find one that's right for you. We also always recommend cruisers opt for travel insurance for any trip, but given the cost and often long travel distances, getting travel insurance for an Alaska cruise makes even more sense. Travel delays, lost luggage, or other travel hiccups could put a damper on your long-awaited trip. Not to mention, they could be very costly to rectify without coverage. Travel policies and plans do vary, so make sure to compare the benefits and options. While the cruise lines do offer travel insurance, we suggest you examine various providers to see if there are plans that better fit your needs. If you have the vacation time and the finances, you should consider extending your Alaska cruise with a Cruisetour. Many cruise lines sailing the region offer add-on land packages. These land portions can vary in length and visit more interior locations beyond the typical southeastern Alaska ports of call. With a Cruisetour, guests can enjoy a scenic train ride, a stay in a lodge, and visits to places like Denali National Park, Fairbanks, or Anchorage. The Alaska cruise season tends to run from late April, early May to the end of September into early October. Historically, the cheapest time to cruise is during the beginning and the end of the cruise season. This is usually referred to as the shoulder season. We've sailed several times during the shoulder season and have taken advantage of some great deals. This is true in both May and September. However, when sailing during these times of year, the weather can be more unpredictable. Further, when visiting during this time of year, all of the tours and shore excursions may not be running. Some shops and restaurants may also be closed. Not to mention, some wildlife may not be as abundant, so just remember that when booking. If you want to avoid the crowds when sailing to Alaska, the shoulder season is also an ideal time to cruise. With many schools still in session in May, and most schools back in session by September, there are fewer families and less tourists overall in Alaska. When sailing during this time of year, we have never had any issues with crowds. Fewer ships tend to be sailing during this time, especially earlier in the season. With several ships repositioning to the region by June, not only are there less people on board, there are less cruise ships at the ports of call as well. We actually prefer cruising during shoulder season for this reason. However, we will be honest, for the best weather, cruisers will want to sail in the middle of the season. During our Alaska cruise in July, we had several sunny days with temperatures actually reaching into the 70s. It was warm and sunny enough to use the outdoor pools and whirlpools. Of course, there's no guarantees, but typically the middle of the summer offers the best weather. It also offers the most sunlight, so cruisers can make the most of the time spent ashore as well as during scenic cruising. But with the best weather comes the highest prices. July and early August tend to be the most expensive time to cruise to Alaska. Along with the fjords, snow-capped mountains, and glaciers, an Alaska cruise is all about the wildlife. During our cruises, we've seen humpback whales, bald eagles, sea otters, and bears. Depending on when you cruise, you might have better chances of seeing some wildlife. Of course, again, there's no guarantee you'll spot any of these creatures during your trip. While they are found in the Gulf of Alaska during the entire cruise season, you have a better chance of spotting humpback whales during the months of June and July. Traveling from late June through early August will also increase your likelihood of seeing bears, especially if you take tours that depart from Juneau or Ketchikan. Luckily, bald eagles are around through the entire cruise season in various stages of development, but you have the best chance of seeing adult eagles teaching young ones to fly in August. A perk of sailing towards the end of the Alaska cruise season is the chance to see the northern lights. The aurora season is generally from the end of August until mid-April. Typically, you have a better chance of seeing the northern lights further north in Alaska, as cloudy skies are common in southeast Alaska. Still, you could get lucky. During the Alaska cruise season, the sun sets earliest in September, the skies are the darkest, making for the most ideal viewing conditions. Depending on your embarkation port, you will likely need to arrange airfare. You should also consider booking a pre-cruise or post-cruise hotel stay. While we always recommend flying in a day early, it's even more important when cruising to Alaska, as many will be traveling a good distance to reach the embarkation ports. So you don't want to risk flight delays or cancellations. Plus, Seattle and Vancouver are both great cities that deserve some time for exploration. You should check with the cruise line or your travel advisor to see if there are any promotional airfares. This option might also offer some peace of mind in case of air delays, as the ship will usually wait for you, or the cruise line will arrange to get you to the next port of call for free. While many debate what stateroom you should select on an Alaska cruise, we have always stayed in a balcony cabin. For us, we think it's worth splurging on this upgrade. Yes, many ships have viewing decks and lounges, and of course we recommend finding the ship that has these amenities. But being able to see the scenery at any time of day, just a few steps from your bed, is worth it for us. Yes, a balcony cabin will cost more, though it's truly breathtaking to admire the natural landscapes from the comforts of your balcony on an Alaska cruise. For US citizens, a passport is technically not required for closed-loop cruises, a cruise that begins and ends in the same US port. Thus, if you're cruising to Alaska round trip from Seattle, a birth certificate and government-issued ID are the only forms of documentation required. However, just because you don't need a passport to go on the cruise, doesn't mean that you might not need one to enter one or more of the ports of call during your trip. For instance, you may need a passport for some Alaska cruise excursions. Shore excursions that visit Canada, like the White Pass Railway in Skagway, do require a passport to participate. Much like shore excursions, another one of our expert Alaska cruise tips is to always book onboard packages and make reservations before boarding the ship. This is one of the easiest ways to save money on a cruise. These add-ons include anything from beverage packages and specialty dining to Wi-Fi and other experiences not included in your cruise fare. If you have a flexible dining option, many cruise lines let you make reservations pre-cruise as well. Of course, if you plan to dine at specialty restaurants, you'll want to pre-reserve those too. Prime dining times do fill up quickly. When not docked at a port of call, most cruise lines offer a variety of onboard talks and lectures. These are not your typical port shopping presentations, but rather enrichment programs that provide valuable information about the history, culture, and wildlife of the ports of call you'll be visiting. These talks are informative, fun, and educational part of your cruise that should not be missed. The onboard naturalists or historians really make that cruise much more enjoyable. As we mentioned earlier, if you're cruising through Glacier Bay National Park, park rangers will actually come on board the cruise ship. These individuals will offer narration and informational sessions that are definitely worth attending. You're going to do and see a lot during your Alaska cruise, so make sure to get some sleep. There will be early morning calls into your port, and glacier sightings that will have you up at dawn. With up to 18 hours of daylight during peak season, we want to take in all the majestic views until late in the evening as well. The extra sunlight can affect your natural sleep cycle, so you may want to consider taking some midday naps. Or bring some clothespins to ensure your balcony drapes block out the light if you head to bed early one night to get some extra shut-eye. In short, the time of year you cruise to Alaska will dictate to some degree what items you will need to include on your Alaska cruise packing list. The type of excursions you book should also factor into what you pack. However, the most important Alaska cruise tip we have is to pack layers. Given the fluctuations in temperature, which in our experience can be 30 degrees or more in one day, you'll need plenty of clothes in varying degrees of warmth. Layers that can be easily packed and taken on and off during the day are preferable. Lightweight vests or packable puffer jackets, midweight tops, and even thermals might make sense depending on your own tolerance for cold. It's also a good idea to pack a water-resistant day bag to easily store these extra layers when going ashore. Speaking of weather and packing, make sure to bring a packable raincoat and some waterproof shoes or boots. It will rain during your cruise. Lightweight waterproof pants might also be a smart investment, especially if you plan on hiking or doing water-based tours like kayaking. If you're lucky, the rain will only pop up here and there, but Ketchikan is one of the rainiest places in the United States after all. Even if the day starts off sunny, be prepared for some fog and rain to roll in eventually. Don't let the damp weather impact your trip though, just be prepared with the right gear. Another Alaska cruise tip is don't forget your bathing suit. While the weather is not exactly beach friendly, the pools and hot tubs on the ships are still open, as is the spa and thermal suite. You might even get lucky enough with the weather to enjoy the outdoor pools. Think of how perfect it would be to enjoy the Alaskan scenery at Sailaway while being gently massaged by the warm water jets of a hot tub. So while there are definitely essentials you need to bring on your Alaska cruise, whatever you do, don't overpack. We can speak from personal experience. On our first Alaska cruise, we didn't know what to expect, so we headed to Seattle with 3 suitcases weighing in at nearly 49 pounds each. We can tell you from personal experience and sailing throughout the Alaska cruise season, you won't need as much outerwear as you might think. We recommend only packing a few warmer layers and water-resistant gear to go ashore. Many of those adventurous tours will provide warmer layers, boots, and the necessary accessories. So check first before packing those items. Of course, everybody's body temperature regulation is different, but we tend to find ships to be actually warm. So make sure to pack some lighter weight items to wear on board. Long sleeve tees and t-shirts, and even a pair of shorts might do. Additionally, multi-use items will help you get a couple wears out of your outfits. If all else fails, self-service laundry is available on many cruise ships as well, so you can even wash clothes when they get dirty during your trip. While we have gotten better at packing, we still haven't figured out how to travel in just carry-ons yet. With all your gear and potentially wet garments, packing some magnetic hooks is a must. For those new to cruising, the walls of your stateroom cabin are magnetic. So one of our trusted cruise cabin hacks is to bring some magnetic hooks. These come in handy to hang bags, hats, and those outer layers. We often place these on the wall opposite our bed or on the other side of the bathroom. These magnets can also be used to post tickets, flyers, or paper dailies so they're easy to read and don't get lost on the desk. Another trusted cabin hack is to bring a packable over-the-door shoe organizer. But this is not for your shoes. We hang this lightweight unit in our stateroom to hold a number of items, from toiletries to medications, small electronics, shore excursion tickets and documents, suntan lotion, jewelry, and other accessories. It's the perfect size for many small objects that can clutter your desk or bathroom. Believe us, we take one on every trip and it always comes in handy. With onboard enrichment, early morning glacier viewing, and long days in port, you may want to consider not purchasing a Wi-Fi package on your Alaska cruise. While internet on cruise ships is constantly improving, the signal in Alaska is not always the best. It can be impacted by weather and interference from landscapes. Further, most of your ports of call will be in the United States and likely covered in your cell service. You will want to check your provider's coverage area prior to sailing. If you do use your cell phone while in port, make sure to put it back into airplane mode once you set sail. You don't want to incur any expensive roaming charges while the ship is out to sea. You don't have to be the captain of the ship, but learning some basic nautical terms is especially important before a cruise to Alaska. Oftentimes, announcements will be made for wildlife sightings and during glacier viewing. Knowing starboard side versus port side will ensure you don't miss out on anything. Port side refers to the left side of the ship when facing forward. An easy way to remember this is that port has 4 letters, as does left. Starboard is the right-hand side of the ship when facing the front. Now, when you hear there's been a whale spotted on the starboard side of the ship, you can just grab your gear and go. Unlike a Caribbean or Bahamas cruise, where we recommend cruisers stay on the ship at one port of call, when sailing to Alaska, we suggest you get off at every single stop. We always like having a game plan for each port of call. Yes, we're over planners. Of course, you don't have to book shore excursions in every port. Many of these Alaska cruise ports are walkable if you just want to explore the downtown area. Or the cruise lines often have shuttles into town as well. We spent days wandering downtown Ketchikan, browsing the shops and local restaurants on Creek Street. We've also walked the streets of Juneau or taken our own transportation to Mendenhall Glacier National Park. The same can be said in places like Skagway or Icy Strait Point. There's plenty to do in these ports of call that don't necessitate a shore excursion or an all-day tour. However, there are many thrilling and exciting shore excursions that you shouldn't miss. Typically, we book excursions in at least half the ports of call, and we do our own self-guided exploration in the others. Now, we discussed budgeting earlier in this video, and one reason Alaska cruises are so expensive are the shore excursions. So if you have your heart set on experiences like glacier hikes, helicopter tours, or dog mushing rides, make sure to budget accordingly. Many of these experiences can cost upwards of $500 a person or more. Of course, you don't need to spend that much money on a tour, but some of these activities are bucket list items for many. We typically book 1 or 2 big ticket excursions per cruise. Then we opt for more reasonably priced tours or just spending the day exploring with lunch or some shopping. But we would suggest budgeting at least $100 per person per port. So with 3 or 4 ports per cruise, don't be surprised if your family's spending thousands of dollars on excursions. On a recent Alaska cruise, we spent over $1,000 a person on tours, but we were able to finally do one of our once-in-a-lifetime tours that we've been trying to do for the past 10 years, because it just kept getting canceled on us. Since an Alaska cruise is a once-in-a-lifetime trip for many travelers, shore excursions do book up quickly. Waiting to book on board the ship or delaying until the actual port of call is a risk we would not take. The last thing you want to hear is the excursion you've been waiting for all year is already sold out. We suggest booking your shore excursions early, as you can always cancel if something pops up. Keep an eye on your online cruise planner, as most cruise lines will periodically run sales on items like shore excursions. Also, you should investigate local tour providers and third-party tour vendors, as they often offer smaller group tours and sometimes cheaper prices. Of course, the food on your ship is going to be delicious, and many cruise lines do source local seafood from Alaska. But when in Alaska, you should eat like an Alaskan. This means you should indulge in the plentiful options ashore. Salmon bakes and Alaskan king crab are just some of the fresh local specialties that you should sample during your cruise. Of course, you'll need some beverages to wash down the food as well. Some recommendations and popular tourist stops include the Red Dog Saloon in Juneau, Tracy's King Crab Shack in Juneau, and the Red Onion Saloon in Skagway. There's also the popular Creek Street with shops and restaurants in Ketchikan. But again, these are just some of the recommendations. While cameras on smartphones have come a long way over the years, they won't do the scenery and wildlife in Alaska justice. If you want great photos to last a lifetime, we recommend bringing a camera with a zoom lens. If you don't own one, you can always rent one. We rented a zoom lens for our camera during our last trip to Alaska, and we're so glad we did. You can also rent other equipment like action cameras, 360 cameras, and accessories like stabilizers. You can rent these online for your cruise at a fraction of what it would cost to buy them. You should also invest in some binoculars. They don't have to be expensive, but a pair of binoculars is crucial when scouting the area for wildlife. Of course, you can also rent these online as well. Of note, some premium cruise lines do provide a pair in each cabin. Now that you know our 35 expert Alaska tips and tricks, we bet you're ready to book that next cruise. Whether it's a Mediterranean cruise, Alaska cruise, or a Caribbean cruise, there are many cruise mistakes we see even seasoned travelers still making. Luckily, many of these cruise mistakes can easily be avoided. And in our recent cruise tips video, we show you exactly how to avoid them. That way, you're one step ahead of everyone else on board, and your Alaska cruise will be smooth sailing.